Hello, fellow egoists! This is the first episode of my new series titled Understanding Ego, where we'll take an in-depth look at certain characters in Blue Lock, what their ego might be, and what this tells us about their future awakenings. Today we'll be going into the subject of Isagi's original ego. Before moving on though, I recommend watching my videos about respectively Spiral Eyes and Metavision, as they're the foundation that we'll use for this entire video. If you don't want to though, it's fine, as I'll shortly explain those concepts without going into too many details. But watching those gives much more depth to everything that I'm about to explain. This video will be broken down in 4 parts. In the first part, we'll look at Isagi's backstory told in his light novel before his arrival at Blue Lock. We'll then have a look at certain key points in Isagi's evolution throughout the series, which show parts of what his ego might be. And finally, merge all of those pieces together to get a look at the puzzle that is Isagi's ego. In the bonus part, we'll touch on 2 different things that are related to his ego. What is his aura, and why his striker ego is the purest in all of the Blue Lock universe. As said before, in this part we'll look at how Isagi evolved before entering Blue Lock, and the insight it gives us on his character. All of this will be based on general info that is given throughout the manga and Isagi's side light novel that you can find linked in the comments. To stay on the topic of the light novel, the first time we were introduced to Isagi in it, we learned that he was a timid child who would get scared really easily. The reason why is actually pretty incredible though. We learned that Isagi was so timid and afraid of everything because his senses were close to out of this world. He was in a total sensory overload, to put it shortly. Let's look at some quotes from the light novel to see that in details. And keep in mind that for all of those quotes, he was only 3 years old. Isagi started pointing to empty spaces and crying. There is something in this house that only Isagi can see. Isagi had spotted mosquitoes from a distance that no ordinary person could see. While playing in the park sometimes, he would hold his head and start crying. His parents didn't know why. And it's only after some time that they realized that he was actually scared of the rain. He could sense the rain before it even came. From the smell of the air, the moisture in the wind, the scudding clouds. He was sensitive to the changes in the sky, seeing that it was going to rain. Isagi was scared because he had a wide field of vision, high spatial awareness, eyesight, kinetic vision, sense of smell, hearing and skin sensitivity. He detects the slightest change at a level that no ordinary people can see or notice, and avoids the risk. That's why he doesn't get bitten by mosquitoes or gets caught in the rain. So with this we can understand that Isagi's natural scanning abilities are close to superhuman. And what does the series call those types of abilities? God-given talents. To quote again the light novel, the superior sense in soccer leads to the ability to foresee the situation through spatial awareness. But neither his parents nor himself knew this at the time. And I remind you that once again, all of this happens before he even turns 4 years old. But when he does, everything changes. On the way home from watching a game with his parents, Isagi asked if he could get a soccer ball. This was the first time Isagi had ever asked for something to anyone. Football started a change in Isagi's demeanor. After this, we get a time skip with the info that Isagi has only been getting more and more passionate about football. He asked for lessons, watched every live game on TV he could, and played football whenever it was possible. He was athletic, but not very good in his studies, a simple boy who loved to play football. But all this passion culminates into something way bigger when he discovers his idol, Noel Noah, the cyborg who scores without a change in his expression. Isagi couldn't take his eyes off of his otherworldly plays. It was too amazing. And even his words were too, especially a line that Isagi would never forget in his entire life. Instead of assisting my teammate to win by 1-0, it feels better to pull off a hat-trick and lose 3-4. You can't sell that kind of emotion anywhere, can you? He felt like Noel Noah understood why he loved football so much. He wanted to be a striker like Noel Noah, and so Isagi started imitating Noel's Noah every move. He watched his videos, analyzed them, and recorded them in a notebook. He spent every day practicing, filling his mind with Noel Noah's soccer. Isagi became stronger and better. He was fearless in running into his opponents, as if he had never been a crybaby. In elementary school, he scored a goal beating 5 opponents in a row. In junior high school, he became known as the unbeatable striker in his hometown of Saitama. This quote will be really important, as we will explain in the third part why exactly Isagi was a fearless dribbler. But all this passion wouldn't last for too long. Isagi then entered Ichi9 High School. The club is strong and historic, with all certificates and cups in the lockers, but most importantly to our analysis, the club's motto written in brush strokes on the largest wall. Looking at it, a tiny sense of discomfort sprouts in Isagi's art. One for all for one. One difficulty after another, there is no wall that we cannot overcome if we all work together. In the next scene, as he tries to discuss this motto with a teammate, we have to remember that Isagi is still a timid child at heart. Well, in soccer it feels good because you can beat your opponents and score goals by yourself, right? That's the joy of being a striker. It's not about joining forces, but about the power of each individual strikers, I guess. And his teammate's response? Huh? You can play soccer by yourself, what are you talking about? Soccer is a sport played by 11 people. My goal is a team play that represents the bond of those 11 people. One for all for one. Let's all join forces and go to the nationals. Isagi thought to himself, am I the only one who thinks this is ridiculous? He couldn't say anything more. This was the beginning of the death of his ego. One day at the end of practice, Isagi had the courage of a lifetime. On a whim, he decided to tell the coach what he thought. Excuse me, I want to go to the next game as a striker. I like to shoot more if possible. This was all Isagi could muster. The coach laughed out loud, but his teammates also did. The coach went on about the importance of the team and strongly hoped that Isagi would contribute to it. Turning red from embarrassment, he bows his head. Each in his high school is to win through team play, and that may be the Japanese way of playing soccer. With a slap on the back, the coach leaves, one for all for one. From that day on, Isagi's desire for the pleasant sensation of shooting, his ego, had been sealed. After this, we get into the first scene where we see Isagi in the manga, his defeat against Kira in the final match of the Saitama Prefecture tournament. Though after that defeat, we get a short look at how Ego described Isagi and why he chose him. Isn't that good? The best of the worst. He has an overwhelming field of vision and spatial awareness. He has an eye for accurately assessing his position in relation to the players around him, and he has a high soccer IQ. A GM who has killed his potential as a striker by using all of his talent for the team. So to summarize all this, we learn multiple things. First off, Isagi is a timid child and a shy person at heart. He's a sort of mob character who's cautious about his interactions and tries to escape danger as much as possible. But he was also fearless and was capable of feats above the standard level of his age in terms of football. He was really athletic up to his time at Ichinan High School, where his ego and will to play slowly faded away along with his improvement and athleticism. I want you to remember especially the first 2 points, as we'll see that while they contradict each other in a way, they give great insight into what Isagi's original ego and playstyle might be. In this part, we won't go for a match per match look at Isagi's evolution, as many people have already done this, and it's not the main point I want to touch on with this video. Instead, we'll look at key moments of his evolution and what those points show us about his ego. One really important thing is that the argument of spiral eyes will be used from now on. Spiral eyes are basically when a character has spirals in their eyes. Those are present most notably during the first selection, and I've theorized that what they seem to represent is the original ego of a player surfacing back into their minds. For more info and proofs of my theory, you can go check my video on them. The first milestone of Isagi's evolution in Blue Lock is when he runs headfirst into the facility. What makes this scene so important is that this is the first time Isagi's deep inner thoughts have been validated after years of being shut down. His ego has finally found a place to unleash itself into the world. With no notable feats at a Japanese level, our protagonist embarks into this adventure to chase his long-lost dreams of becoming the best. He was just days before at the end of his rope, the end of his dream, and now a starving beast enters the fray to change his fate. The second milestone is of course the famous direct shot. What's really important here is that Isagi is reborn, as Nagi puts it in the episode Nagi rendition of this scene. Isagi's aura in the anime turns from blue to green. He has finally been reborn into an egoist. And this is only the beginning of his exponential growth up to this point. One quick thing I want to touch on is that the reason direct shots are an integral part of Isagi's playstyle is that they give him the time to act before people can catch up to his predictions. As said before in my video about spiral eyes, a player's awakened weapons seem to be related in theme to their ego. For example, Chigiri's ego is all about running past people, so his speed is incredible. Bachira is all about becoming one with the ball, so his dribbling is masterful, etc, etc. So with this, we can already guess that Isagi's ego is related to seeing in the future. Though it may seem obvious to some people, this is highly important and further examples will really set this in. The second time Isagi gets an epiphany is when he discovers the concept of blind spots in the 2v2 against Baro and Naruhaya. The really important part is that in this match, the moment Isagi deciphered the concept of blind spots, his skills and playmaking evolved in a flash. His football IQ grasped this concept immediately without even needing the time to adapt to it. There isn't much to say about his evolution other than that, as he devoured this concept instead of awakening it. The really interesting scene comes after that, in the second 3v3 of the second selection for our egoist. The moment Isagi finally turns into the game master of this losing game is when he thinks of devouring Baro. And the one thing I want to highlight is that this time Isagi has spiral eyes while having this idea. With this we can deduce that his original ego is about using people as pawns to turn himself into light. Though in the anime the spiral eyes aren't rotating, so this means that this isn't the total part of his playstyle. After all, this is related to using people and not exactly seeing the future. Just by tapping into his original ego for a second, Isagi's playmaking skills already make him the king of the field, seeing everything and using everyone for his goals, even to a point where he forces a path out of the so-called King Baro. Here is the moment I think we got to see what Isagi's ego was like. He said after this match that this was adrenaline, but when you're shot on adrenaline, what comes out is your energized self. Here we get to see what Isagi might become later on in the story. This is also the first time we see one of the themes that is really important to Isagi. Seeing everything, seeing the future. As Reo puts it, everything that happened up to Nagi's interception of his final pass was seen by Isagi's eyes and brains. The match after this, the 4v4 against Rin, doesn't have much to analyze, except for the 2 times spiral eyes are shown on Isagi, those being when he reads the future of the field. To quote Nagi himself, "Read this situation, rewrite the future of this battlefield." And Isagi, "This is the future of the field I envisioned." So once again, we see that his ego is about seeing the future, and as said before, his abilities are related in theme to that. And what is the next time we see Isagi showcase his abilities to such a level? When he first uses metavision during the third selection tryouts and scores past Rin and Shido. Note that the title of this chapter is Total Sensory Experience, which calls back to his childhood abilities as we saw earlier. Though the thing I really wanted to highlight is that when he uses his abilities, his thoughts are, don't think about it, move by feeling, believe in my every nerve, every sensation. And one small detail that you may have not caught on, but when black bosses or black mists in the anime are used, they're usually there to showcase the thoughts of someone. They seem to represent original ego, from Baro's monologue in the 3v3, Rin's black boxes about destroying in the U20 match, or even Yuki's thoughts before scoring in the Manshine City match. So here we see that Isagi's original ego is telling him to move without thinking, trusting his every nerve, every sensation, and use all this to find the best shooting point and dash to that place. After that, our egoist breaks past Rin and Shido to score, even though we know both of those characters tend to butt into each other. He was fearless into running past both of them to score while knowing how dangerous this position is. Though in the first part, we'll actually see why this wasn't dangerous for him, and why he was fearless into running at this point. Finally, we get to the U20 match. Not much here needs to be said, as Isagi played more of a supporting role, but is really important to the match. He enabled the Blue Lock's 11 attacking patterns and general plays just with his presence, shaving off time for his allies to shoot, and also giving space for others to pass to him. Sure, Rin was able to create amazing plays, but Isagi was the foundation that made many of the plays and made all of Blue Lock's goals possible. Though there is one moment I want to highlight, the moment Isagi proved that he was a true striker to the whole world. Let's imagine the situation. The score is tied. The enemy team is on a counter-attack and you have no one ready for defense in your team. Only 1 minute left. The stress is piling on. If the enemy scores, your entire football career is over. But what does Isagi do in that precise moment, where the pressure is at its max and most people would have given up because they can have no impact in the defense? With a counter led by the genius Sae himself, who has been toying around with Blue Lock during this entire match, he lets his instincts take over. He enters flow without even a thought and sees a scoring opportunity that no one but him could ever see in this situation. He gambles all of his career, hopes and dreams on a single instant. He believes in himself and in Rin. He embraces the situation and fights through all the despair that Sae has bestowed upon this field for the past 90 minutes. Through his sheer willpower, determination to score and belief in his abilities, he finds the place where all of Japan's eyes could be looking at for 1 second. He finds the spot where he could score. But his only salvation is all dependent on one thing: luck. Rin stops Sae, and as the ball is falling, the goddess of luck hears Isagi's call. And as the ball is coming down, there he appears. He shoots. nothing can be heard, except for the sound of the ball going into the net. What felt like an eternity of silence to the people in the stadium gets broken down by one word. This is the moment Isagi Yoichi has proven to the world that he is indeed a true striker. And though many will come to doubt him, this one goal is the undeniable proof that our protagonist has the instinct of a striker, one that will unleash his ego onto the world without a stop. After this, we get the Neo-Egoist League arc where Isagi's worth as a striker is put to the test. In the Barsha match, Isagi's genius of adaptability is highlighted. While playing for only some minutes, he immediately understands that in Kaiser's system he will never be able to play the way he wants to. So what does he do? He creates a path using everything he can at the moment. No fluke goal, pure rationality following his objectives. A small detail that is really important during the Neo-Egoist League arc is that Isagi's eyes but also brains have been getting a lot of attention. For example, the page where he first enters flow during the Barsha match. And this isn't just for nothing, as we'll see later on. By getting an assist, our protagonist is able to get a place into the regulars of the Bastard München team. Moving on to the next match, Bastard München vs Mannheim City. While looking at Kaiser playing, Isagi awakens the concept of metavision. The really important thing is that Kaiser never actually told to Isagi what this was. Kaiser was just the final piece needed for Isagi to awaken metavision. After all, during the U20 match, he wondered why Sae was able to play from a higher dimension, or why Kaiser was like the perfect version of what he could imagine at the time. So while he watches Kaiser, the final piece of the puzzle is set. He sees a door, a ticket to becoming the best. This is the super awakening of the egoist Isagi Yoichi. His original ego is starting to see a way out. As he puts the pieces together, spiral eyes appear and one sentence comes out of his mouth. It could be like becoming a god. For the next scene, we have to remember that when Isagi played following his original ego, he was in a total state of enjoyment. And what happens when he understands the field in a way he never did, when he sees a scenery and a future he could never imagine before? He smiles. The spiral eyes are in full throttle in Isagi's metavision design. And when was the last time we saw white lies over spiral eyes? Marine's awakening during the U20 match. As said before, when Isagi was in the 3v3 and forced the barrow to pass, this was surely what his original ego and aura was like. And what happens once again when he awakens metavision? He forces the pass out of Corona. His aura is so different from usual that Corona seems baffled, even blurting out egoist when he sees Isagi and realizes that he has no options but to pass to him. Two things to highlight is that as Isagi gains hope and finds the ticket to becoming the best, Noel Noah has the same eyes as him while he watches Isagi playing, and unleash his newfound ideal on the field. An eye design that you have never seen in the manga, truly saying in how Isagi has finally found his path to becoming the best. And in the chapter where Isagi shows those eyes and finds his ticket, the first page is a color page of him playing on the world stage against Luna and Kaiser, showing how what he just gained is the piece using his god-given talent that would get him to reach the world stage and showcase his worth as the best striker in the world. A really important piece to Isagi's evolution so far is the egocentrism piece. Isagi becomes all-seeing, from the state of the field to the state of each player physically but also mentally. With this piece he becomes an even better playmaker than Kaiser, the number 2 striker of his generation, with the first being Loki. And our final piece, but one that is hidden throughout the story, is the god theme of Isagi. From all the way back in the first selection when Shigiri first described Isagi's weapon, to Yukimiya calling him a god or a devil, when he crushes his hopes. Isagi tends to be compared to a god whenever he is in the zone. But most importantly, it's even highlighted by himself when he has spiral eyes, but also by Noel Noah himself when Isagi enters flow. We'll touch on that dialogue a bit later on though, as it has one of probably the biggest foreshadowing in the entire story. Many other examples can be found throughout the manga, but I'll let you guys check that out for yourselves. Now that we've gotten all the pieces I wanted to show, we can finally take a bigger look at the puzzle that is Isagi's original ego. From all that we've seen of Isagi, his original ego seems to be about seeing the future, being a godly entity on the field that sees everything happening and moves around using people as pawns to get to his goal. As shown before, whenever Isagi is in the zone, he is treated as a sort of god. He sees a scenery, a future that no one can, and acts upon it. All of Isagi's abilities so far seem to go in that direction, and this is why metavision is so important and is the beginning of his super awakening. He unlocks the central piece to his playstyle, his tool to use his talent and see into the future farther than anyone. And also why he becomes so proficient at using it in such a short amount of time. He's finally starting to use his talent in the way it was always used before he sealed his ego. This is the reason he has a special metavision design with puzzle pieces. It's to show just how rooted in his ego metavision is. The moment he unlocks it, he becomes more and more like a monster, as Isagi puts it. His passion for football and the reason he originally played has been lit up once again. Now all that he needs to do is to grasp this chance and use the ticket that metavision gave him to dive into his God-given talent. By using this, he can finally become the best player in the world. Though what exactly is his God-given talent? As said before, it's his senses, from vision, hearing, touch, smell to taste. After all, he did sense the danger that Nico was without even seeing him. He guessed the exact point where the pass from Hiori would come before Shido and Rin, and stopped the new shooting technique of the number 2 striker in the world without even looking at the ball, and ran straight to defend it before Chris even started his shooting motion. But how exactly could he use them? I've seen a lot of people try to say that he could reach a higher dimension than metavision, but this is impossible. Metavision is the highest dimension a person could reach in terms of seeing the field. A 3D image of the field that flows through the dimension of time. But there are ways to improve metavision. As stated in my video about metavision, there are 3 steps to it. First, get as much information as possible. Second, create a mental map of the field using your spatial awareness of said information. And finally, process all of this using your football IQ to find the best path to your goal. So to improve at metavision, you need to improve at one of those 3 steps. Isagi's football IQ with egocentrism is already gigantic, so his god senses wouldn't really improve that area. Rather, they would improve the step of acquiring information. We have seen Isagi do no-look passes using his spatial awareness and stop a shot from the number 2 striker in the world without even looking at it. Couple that with the recent chapters that have truly highlighted how important it is to input information properly, and I think that Isagi's original ego and playstyle would involve him having a zone around him, where he can input information without directly looking inside the zone. A sort of safeguard zone which would delete blind spots. Now this may seem crazy, but seeing Isagi's feats and the way spatial awareness works for humans, this is a totally feasible idea. To get a feel for that and see how it isn't totally impossible to do, we can take an example that most people can probably relate to. When you were a child playing tag with your friends, they were running right behind you. Even if you didn't have your eyes on them, because of your hearing, vision of your shadow made by them and your skin sensitivity, you're able to feel, not accurately, but at least where they are related to you. But in Isagi's case, his senses are so good that he can even tell the rain coming from the smell and general feeling of the air, so it's totally feasible for him to be able to do this, but on a way bigger and larger scale. The big thing of metavision is that information is key. If you lack information, your play will be flawed in some way. But with Isagi's god senses, he could get a vision around him where information is inputted constantly and as accurately as possible. So for example, he could foresee IQ coming into his range before actually seeing him with his eyes. And the same thing with Kaiser in the Manshine City match, for example, making him able to see into the future and prepare for it before it does happen. As he himself puts it, when first entering flow, move by feeling, believe in my every nerve, every sensation. Now this is a highly broken ability if it is indeed what Isagi will get, but it isn't impossible to break. After all, what I talked about is the process of acquiring information, not actually acting upon it. Because when it comes to then acting upon said information, it becomes a whole other story. Nagi, for example, was able to break past Isagi's predictions because his skill when doing the 5-stage fake volley was just that stronger than what Isagi could anticipate using his information. Note that the one who was able to destroy regularly Isagi's future vision when he gave it his all was Nagi, another god-themed character. This will also explain why Isagi was a fearless dribbler. He is a cautioned person at heart that tries to dodge danger. But what danger is there if you can see the future? He could run into multiple people without fear because he knew exactly what they would do, and by seeing that, was able to avoid danger altogether. The same thing happened when he went past Shido and Rin to score in the third selection. Even though they would butt into each other, because of his ability to see into the future, he knew exactly how to position himself and how to dodge them. Now this zone, which we could call the God Zone for example, could also be used in 1v1s using his senses to develop a counter-style dribble. Similarly to Sae, who would rely on reading the flow of the opponent and dribbling past that. The possibilities are endless with his god senses in mind. A foreshadowing that fits a lot of this theory is the one where Noel Noah is teaming up with Isagi. This is probably the most important foreshadowing for Isagi in my opinion. Not only does Noel Noah call out Isagi's god complex, but most importantly tells him not to be greedy. So we can guess that Isagi's God Zone will probably have so much information that his brain will have a hard time to try and process all this. This is why I think chapter 218 was really important in that regard. This chapter tells us that information is key, but there are multiple ways to input and interpret information. So my first theory is that Isagi will try to be a true god on the field, trying to expand his God Zone to the entire field, but the problem is that by doing so, not only will information far away be inaccurate, but also with that much information he could block the processing of all this, by overloading his brain with too much information. So with that, the greediness of his playstyle will need to be restricted to a smaller area for him to streamline his thoughts. Just like how metavision evolves using peripheral vision, Isagi here could use his eyes as central vision and his god senses themselves as a peripheral vision. To conclude and summarize a bit, Isagi's original ego seems to be about being an omnipotent god on the field, seeing the future and controlling people. His god-given talent related in theme to that are god senses, which help him acquire information in the depth that no one person except him but could. His abilities when he'll finally rediscover his original ego will surely be about seeing into the future farther than any person can. Though will he be able to act on his vision is another story. And for now, the best candidate to those abilities seems to be God Zone, which would give him a sort of omnipotent zone where he overwrites any future in it. By being able to tell exactly what is happening in this zone, he'll become the ultimate playmaker. A player who can only be stopped by characters that can go beyond his godly football IQ, characters who have also a god theme related to their ego. And with this, we've finally touched on the 3 main parts that I wanted to show. Now let's touch on our bonus part, with the first point being Isagi's aura. The color green is there to represent growth, which is what our protagonist is most known for. But what I wanted to touch on was rather the expression of his ego. Characters like Chigiri have a panther, Aiku a snake, and Shido a dragon. But what is Isagi's? It's the eye and brain entity flying over the field. This truly sets in just how important metavision is to his playstyle. It's the basis of his entire kit to see into the future, a mix of all of his abilities into one godly entity seeing the field from a place where no one can reach it. And a small detail that I've touched on during my analysis of chapter 220 is that Isagi and Kaiser have strikingly similar auras, but this is something I'll make an entire video about, so stay tuned for that. For the second point and final one of this video, it's Isagi's pure striker ego. For those who don't know, Isagi's name means the world's purest, as Yoichi means world's best and Isagi clean or pure. But why is it that he has the purest ego? Without getting into his mentality and approach to life, which is another topic, but one that is really interesting, Isagi's ego only looks for one thing: his best scoring option, no matter in what form it comes. Characters like Bachira or Chigiri, for example, can look up for their best scoring option, but is limited by their ego and general technique. For Chigiri, he's looking where he can run past people. Bachira, it's about dribbling past, and for Rin, it's about destroying hideously. And you can take that example for pretty much all of the cast. So in that aspect, Isagi is the purest, as he's not looking for a special way of scoring. As long as he can score, he is fine with whatever happens, even if his goal is granted by luck. Though in that aspect, another character whose ego is pretty pure is Shido. All he cares about is scoring, but scoring is a means to an end for him. It's a way to fertilize the world with his goal by making everyone remember him. Though for Isagi the goal is the end itself. Sure, he wants to be the true protagonist of the field, but it's just so that he can score and not for anything else. This is why being the best is so deeply related to his ego. As he says himself, he has to be the strongest among all. Only by being that person can he score as much as his ego wants. And this is exactly why Isagi has the ego needed to become the best striker in the world. It's not bound by anything and is free to roam the field in whatever way it can. Either by being a shadow on the field that comes out at the best moments, or light that destroys everyone in its way. By diving into the future where he is the one true protagonist of the field, Isagi becomes the all-seeing god of the field, the ultimate puppeteer. Thanks for watching and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, stay tuned, as for the next episode of this series we will dive into the case of Sae and Hiori. I already did a short post on Reddit which explains a bit of what I'll talk there. See how both characters seem to be the same type of player and what this tells us about the Blue Lock universe. Until then, see you next week for my analysis of chapter 221 of the manga. And with this said, have a great one, fellow egoists.